Morning. This is our first coffee with the legislators in 2024. I'm Michael Held, and I'm going to moderate this morning. These are organized by the Governmental Affairs Committee of the Huron Chamber and Visitors Bureau. Refreshments were provided by AARP and by the South Dakota Farmers Union. Please turn your cell phones off or put them on vibrate so we don't interrupt the proceedings this morning. Want to thank our three legislators for being here, David Wheeler, Senator Wheeler, and Representatives Roger Chase and Lynn Schneider. Want to also thank the Huron Plainsman Performance Radio. You can view this or tell others about viewing this by going to YouTube under Huron, South Dakota. Also want to recognize we've got a number of the Governmental Affairs Committee in the audience, if they just raise their hand. Okay. And Lori Shelton, sitting here in the front row, President of the Huron Chamber, will be our timekeeper this morning. We will begin with 3 minutes from each of the three legislators. After that, we will go to questions. You can either come to the podium and ask a question, or Tom Hansen has some cards and pens, and so does Doug Ramsel, and we can get you a card and you can write your question on a card and we'll handle it that way. So I think we're ready to go, and we are going to start with Roger Chase. Roger?
Thank you, Mike, and good morning, everybody. Your dreams almost came true. I woke up this morning early and I couldn't talk. And so I've taken several doses of medicine and cough lozenges, and I think I'm talking a little bit better, so we'll be able to do this. I just want to say that the first coffee with the legislators is always the easiest one. We haven't done too much yet to really get you upset. And the harsh bills are still to come. We've got the easy bills done. We're 3 weeks into the session and basically a third done with the overall bills that we're going to have. This year we were all concerned that we were going to have upwards of 700-800 bills, and I think that's kind of been toned down a little bit. As of right now, we're a little over 400, with the rest of the bills having to be put into place by this coming Wednesday. And so I still expect quite a few to come, and the ones that are probably going to be the most controversial will be dropped this coming week, probably on Monday or Tuesday, so stay tuned for what those bills will be. Other than that, we've kind of moved things up a little bit this year. We used to always have the state of the state, state of the tribes, and state of the judiciary, state of the tribes on 3 separate days. We moved that up a little bit. We did the state of the state on Tuesday, we did the judiciary and the state of the tribes on Wednesday. What that did is allowed us to get into session and have committee meetings on that Thursdays and Fridays, where we actually had bills on the floor on that Friday. So we wanted to make sure we had a head start going into it. And for those of you that don't know, I live with Speaker Bartles, who is the Speaker of the House. And so as soon as bills come in, we read them, we get them assigned to committees. And his goal was to be done with the legislative activity in 28 days. And I said, well, Hugh, you know we can't do that. He said, well, we're going to try. But we're going to try to keep things moving along as quickly as we can. And in committees have been functioning perfectly. We've been getting 3-4 bills out a day. I think in my bill log and ag, we've got 4 bills, House bills remaining, with several weeks to go. So crossover's coming up to us here relatively soon, and we're moving right along. So I want to say a special thanks to people that have came out and been part of the visitation. I want to say special thanks to the Chamber and Convention Visitor Bureau for allowing me to sit at their table for tourism banquet here 10 days ago. Credit unions were out for the final time. As I'm in my final year, I kind of look at all these things that we do, from the state of the state to all of the different functions that we do, and kind of say, well, that's checking that off. That's the last time I'll be doing that. So it's kind of nice to be able to say this is the finale for those, and we've enjoyed the time. But looking forward to your discussion this morning, and stand by.
Thank you, Roger. Next, we'll hear from Representative Lynn Schneider. Lynn?
Good morning. Again, my privilege and honor to be here and to give you my perspective on where things are in the legislature so far. The 400 or so bills that Representative Chase mentioned have been dropped so far. It is almost equally divided between the Senate and the House. And I think normally the House, because there's more members there, would be the majority. So not sure what that means this year, but I guess that's okay as far as the House is concerned. We are off to a good start for the normal traditional things that happen, and I think that's a good sign, gives us more time to get into the meat of some of these bills earlier. But of course, there hasn't been much talked about money yet, because although in December, the governor gave her budget address as to how she thinks we should put a budget together. That's her job, and then it's up to the legislature to review that and figure out what they would really like to do and make that work for everybody, including the governor. Now, one of the things that has to happen there is we like to wait as long as we can into the session, which is usually getting close to the middle of February until we've got the most recent and updated numbers, and so that's still coming. But basically, the governor's not bill, but her budget provides for the bulk of any kind of quote excess funds to go toward the prison projects that are heavy on our plate. And there will pretty quickly be lots of discussion about that and bills, and even things like should we really go ahead and get this done as fast as we can now, or should we go a little slower? And the trade-offs are always, what's the cost if you're gonna do some bonding, or what's the interest bill gonna be, and payments and all that kind of stuff. So we can get into that a little bit later this morning too. As you heard Roger Chase mention, this is his final year. His is a function of term limits. And I think most all of you know this is going to be my final year too. Not from a term limit standpoint, but because I just felt that after being in this seat for 4 years, 2 full terms, been very enjoyable, very challenging, met a lot of great people along the way, learned a whole lot about how this process works, but it just seemed like it's appropriate to step aside now. So there will be 2 open spots, which is unusual for the representatives in one district. So it should be interesting this spring, and I think there will be a primary the way it looks. So be watching and waiting on that, and be informed as you can when you go to polls in June. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Schneider. Ladies, there's a couple chairs right here. If you would want to come and sit down, come on. We will, good morning, Senator Wheeler. We'll hear from Senator David Wheeler.
That's what happens when you come late. It's like church. You gotta sit up in the front, right? I kind of feel like I'm in a bill hearing, and I'm at the point where I gotta say me too, because they've already covered a lot of the stuff. And with the exception that I'm the one hoping this is not my last term, so that's for a different forum, I think. But I think the biggest story, as they've covered for the first 3 weeks, has been the pace of the session. Kicked off quickly, and we've been handling bills at a fast pace this year. And so we are, I think, doing well in getting through our workload and considering a lot of bills, a lot of different subject matter areas that we have to deal with. But I think we're doing it well, and the harder decisions regarding budgeting will be coming up. We're not quite there yet. You have to do the revenue estimates first to see how much money we think we're going to have. Then we can start really setting that figure as to how much we can spend on different issues. I think, as Representative Schneider pointed out, the prison funding is going to be a big topic towards the end of the session. It's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars. We've already got a few $100 million set aside in the fund that we created. As I said, the governor wants to take almost everything excess we have this year and put it into that fund also. So there's going to be some questions about legislative spending priorities that we may have, that we may say, well, let's not quite put all of it in that fund. We have other things we want to spend money on in the state too. So, but that's going to be an interesting discussion we have further down the road of this legislature. But I think with that, we'll use the rest of the time for your questions. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you, Senator. So now we're ready for your questions. Come to the podium here, state your name and where you live. And I would remind you, those of you who have been here before have heard me say this many times, we are here to listen to the legislators, so we're interested in your questions, not speeches from the audience. And I will try and hold you to that. Who wants to be first after I've intimidated you? Come on up. State your name and where you live. You can make a few comments, but let's have the questions. Thank you, sir.
No, Douglas Bierke, right here from District 22. And this, I have two questions. First, I think this would be pointed at Roger, being on the Transportation Board. I just heard recently there was some other stuff that went through on the autonomous vehicle bill. And then my second question would be to David. I'm sorry, but I get in and out of my vehicle all the time, and you've sponsored a bill, and I think it's just recently went to Chambers or something. If you could tell a little bit about that, or more than one.
Okay. Roger, you want to start?
You bet.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Doug. And autonomous vehicles, automated motorized vehicles. And I was the prime sponsor on that bill. And that's been a working progress for probably close to 2 years. I think it was the fall of 2022 when I was approached on my opinion and what I thought about automated autonomous vehicles. And let's face it, they're coming. They'll be here sooner than later. And as of right now, the people that brought that to my attention said, we don't have any laws, we don't have any restrictions, we don't have anything on the books pertaining to autonomous vehicles. And what we're talking about is level 4 and 5 vehicles, folks. And for most of you that are driving and riding in your vehicles right now, you probably have a classified level 1 through level 3 vehicle that you're driving right now. These would be level 4 and 5s. Level 4 is partially autonomous, but still can be controlled by a driver with inside the vehicle. Level 5 is fully autonomous, self-driving vehicle. And so Transportation Commission, as well as Department of Transportation, Business and Industry came to me and said, would you help us work and draft up a bill to get this done? And so we had a bill last year. It went before the Transportation Committee. It was killed, I think, on an 8-4 vote. And then as I get into these things, I kind of take it personally. I said, okay, let's make sure that we get this right. So throughout the last year, there's been work groups that's been hosted out of the Transportation Department with insurance companies and retailers, business and industry, highway patrol, Department of Revenue, Department of Transportation, the sheriff's departments, all working on what they feel is important. The municipal league, all feeling on what's important to make sure that we get this right, to have something in place with autonomous vehicles. And so the bill did pass Senate and Commerce Committee. On the House side, we had the long debate again on Thursday before we came home, and it did pass the House, so it's coming on over to the Senate. So it's House Bill 1095, Senator, if you want to find it there. And I feel this is an important thing to do, because right now we have nothing in place. And it's important to get that foundational legislation in place so that when this does happen, we've got something ready to go, rather than reacting from behind the 8 ball, so to speak. And let's move forward and be proactive and get it done.
Go ahead, Senator.
Ted, ask me which bill were you asking about?
Well, it was one that you sponsored, and I just caught a portion of it on the radio, and it was talking about it, and then that you said that it said that you were the main sponsor.
That narrows it down to
Yeah,
about 15 bills.
I got a couple that I'm prime sponsor on. On the radio recently.
Yeah, out of Mitchell radio station.
Mitchell radio station.
Yeah.
I don't know which.
If you got more than one, that's fine.
I got a handful.
I'm
So-
not putting you on the spot, so.
You don't remember the subject matter at all? the
No.
video? Okay. I can go through my list of bills at some point.
We've only got 45 minutes left.
That's right.
Yes, Representative Schneider.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe if I could just add a little bit to Representative Chase's comments on the autonomous bill. One of the points that was made pretty extensively is that this bill gives us a starting point knowing that once these autonomous vehicles get here, there will likely be more and more tweaking that we need to do with rules, and maybe that will involve an additional bill or two in the next few years. The only other thing that I would say about those right now, autonomous vehicles, is that in the state of Arkansas, that Walmart is using driverless semis with their vehicles now up and down the roads in Arkansas. So it is happening. And as hard as that is for a lot of us to wrap our minds around, how can that really work? I mean, all kinds of driving conditions or whatever, but it was interesting, some of Representative Chase's comments reminded the people that these autonomous vehicles, they obey the speed limit, they don't text while they're driving, and they don't drink and drive. So in a lot of ways, they really are way safer than humans.
Believe me, folks, I know a lot about autonomous vehicles, so we can discuss this at a later time if you have concerns. But I made the comment on the House floor, autonomous vehicles are safer than vehicles driven by humans because of the high sensibility and the advanced technology that they have, and for those very reasons that he just stated. So I am supporting of the bill and think it's a good step forward.
Okay, who would like to ask the next question? Sure, come forward, sir.
Can I ask two questions?
You may.
My name is Jamie Fisk. I'm from Tulare, South Dakota. First question is to all three of you. How do you each stand on taking, there's possibly some bills coming forward to take local control from the counties and the PUC away, and how do you stand on that issue? The other is that Northwestern Energy has gone to the PUC and they're doing a study on nuclear power to replace the Big Stone power plant. And I would like to know how each of you would address what we're going to do with the nuclear waste, since the United States government has never had a place to put it, and it's being stored at local power plants right now. And that waste is building up. If we put a power plant in, or two nuclear power plants in the state of South Dakota, where is that waste going to go? And it's the most toxic substance known to man. Those are my two questions.
Thank you, sir. Who would like to start?
I'll go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm assuming regarding your first question that would be relating to CO2 pipelines and so forth?
Local control. The counties and the cities, their control over writing ordinances.
Okay, well, I was just thinking of CO2 pipelines in terms of like what's going on in Lincoln County, for example, where the county commission has established certain setbacks and things like that. And my understanding was that, you know, then the debate centers on, well, how much of that kind of local control could that situation deserve as a result of the interest of the pipeline company. And the only other thing I was going to say on that at this point is I was just informed Thursday that the House and Commerce Committee that I sit on is been given a heads up that we can expect pretty much almost all of whatever pipeline type bills and local control and whatnot that goes with that are going to come through that committee. And I think we'll be hearing at least two of them next week already. And there's a expectation that there could be as many as a dozen of those bills. So our House of Commerce Committee is probably going to be really busy with that whole topic. I'm trying to think on the two that I've already seen that are coming in front of us next week. I know one of them involves how much control a particular landowner can have in authorizing or not authorizing surveying work to happen on his property. And this bill looks like he has the right to require his written permission before the surveyors could come on. But I didn't see it clear enough in the bill whether or not he can just flat outright deny it. So all those types of bills that we're going to be looking at, A lot of them, we gotta wait and see what the language really looks like and whether there's gonna be amendments that go on top of them before we can really say, this is how we can expect those to turn out. But that's a very tough situation dealing with the local control in that regard. And what is the greater good of the whole economy that we have, and that finally turns into a philosophical debate because property rights are very, very important as well. So for me, where do I stand on that? I'd just make one more observation. Generally, there's not as many miles of pipeline proposed in Beetle County as there are in Spink County, which are the two primary sections of District 22 with a little sliver in Clark. And I have not sensed near the amount of concern with the pipelines in Beetle County as I have up in Spink County. So for a legislature to come down, a legislator from this district to come down one side or the other, it looks like it's gonna be quite a challenge to come to a position that we can have all of District 22 say, yeah, that was okay.
I'll take off with that. On your first question, local control, I think all of us up here are for local control as long as it's respectable and reasonable. And to my answer to that is, some counties have formulated ordinances that to me are totally unreasonable and unrealistic. And I think that with that being said, I think the state needs to come forward and set some consistency and come together with a plan that moves not only pipelines, but any other future project along, such as nuclear power. And we in the House have approved the exploratory ability for utility companies to explore and investigate the possibility of coming together and having a nuclear plant at some point in the state of South Dakota. We are trying to get away from a carbon world, and nuclear power is one of those possibilities of creating electricity for a growing demand that has that opportunity. There are other nuclear plants in other parts of the country, and obviously the world, that is a low-cost provider of utilities, a respectable, a long time, easy way to create electric power. As we get to windmills and solar panels, on those days that we don't have any wind or it's cloudy like it is today, we need to have the ability to generate additional power to meet the demands from everybody. And whether that's coal power, whether that's natural gas or nuclear. And so that's where we're at right now, is looking at investigating what the future of power is going to be in South Dakota. So that's my response to the question.
Go ahead, David.
Thank you. I'll pick right up on that. Future development of our society in general is going to depend upon having a good energy source for a long time. We're only going to be seeing increased demands in energy. We're not going to be decreasing the amount of energy we use. It's only going up, especially as we see more electric vehicles coming online and people powering transportation that way. And to be able to make sure everybody has the amount of energy they want and need, we have to have a sufficient amount. It has to be what's called dispatchable. And wind and solar projects are great. They're good additions to the energy mix. But I'm definitely one of the all of the above type when it comes to energy policy. We need coal-fired power plants still. We cannot survive without them at this point. We need wind and solar to help reduce the amount of carbon that we do use when we can. But ultimately, nuclear is going to have to be part of that conversation because it can produce the amount of megawatts necessary to replace some of those coal-fired power plants. Right now, solar and wind cannot. Also, solar and wind don't go all the time. The wind doesn't always blow and the sun is out at night. And so when you need power in those times when those are low, nuclear is always running. Now, we all are concerned about the environmental impacts of nuclear power. What Northwestern and other energy utilities are looking at right now is what are called modular nuclear reactors. So they're small. It's not the big, huge towers that you might think of when you think about a nuclear plant. It's more like the size of what might be a nuclear sub, that kind of power plant. And you take a few of those and you put them in an area and you can power a lot of homes. Right now the idea is you store the nuclear waste on site, but there's a very small amount of waste that are generated by those particular plants. And so if we all want to use more energy, then it's going to have to be part of the mix. And so I am definitely in favor of making sure that we are part of the future of that industry, making sure that we have the regulations in place, and we're part of the what's called an agreement state. That'll be part of a bill coming through the process this year to ensure that we can have the proper regulations in place for that. Just briefly on the other question, local control, I think Representative Chase answered that pretty well. I am also a proponent of local control. Government is best generally when it's at the smallest level possible. However, there are times that has to give way, and that's when there are larger statewide interests in play. And for a linear project, and so that's a pipeline, that's an electrical transmission line, roads, things that are going to go across multiple counties, across the entire state, it becomes more reasonable to have uniform standard rules on that. The setback requirements in one county shouldn't be different from the setback requirements in a different county. We're talking about the same safety concerns. We should understand what those are, and we should have, for linear projects that go across multiple counties, we should have one standard that everybody has to apply by. I'm not out to kill a pipeline, I'm not out to promote a pipeline. I'm out to make sure that we have reasonable ground rules in place that those companies can then determine how they operate within. And I think that's where we need to be going for.
Thank you. Who would like to ask the next question? Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, regarding the energy question, nuclear and so forth, I was just keying off of Senator Wheeler's comment about being basically a proponent of all of the above, and partly because I don't know that we've found a single type of generating process or source of energy that is totally dependable all the time, with no interruptions and so forth. So that's why you need these backups. But it reminded me of another bill that we've heard and passed out of our House committee, and that was House Bill 1034 that the Public Utility Committee a commission brought to us and asked to approve it. And that involved hydrogen pipelines. So another source of energy. I don't know how many of us are familiar with hydrogen pipelines, but I was not before I saw that bill. Down along the Gulf Coast, maybe it's Louisiana to the Florida Panhandle, somewhere in there, there are about 500 miles of hydrogen pipelines now. Why would we be interested in that for South Dakota? Well, what the PUC explained to us is that the federal government is mapped out across the continental United States about 7 different geographical zones called hydrogen hub centers. And the geography that catches us is South Dakota, North Dakota, and Minnesota. And the specific request of PUC was to pass this bill, which would then allow the PUC the authority to site these pipelines. Thinking we don't have any hydrogen pipeline requests today, this plan by the federal government starts setting in motion that someday, whether it's a year from now or 10 years from now, we may have one of those. And what does it do? What is it for? Well, basically 2 things. Hydrogen can be used to generate electricity, or it can also be used to generate fertilizer for the agricultural industry and so forth. And PUC reminded us that it was back in 2007 when they got authority from the legislature to cite CO2 pipelines. And here it was over 10, 12 years later until finally we had the pipeline stuff come in front of the state. So they just wanted to be prepared. Will there actually need to be a pipeline from a generating center to where the product gets used, it's too early to tell yet. But anyway, that's out there, hydrogen pipelines.
Thank you. Who would like to ask the next question? Come on forward, ma'am.
Good morning, Gail Lake Byron. Yesterday, the Senate, Joint Senate Committee, right? Passed Senate, Joint Resolution 501, which was in reference to the Medicaid expansion, correct? So in 2022, South Dakota passed the Medicaid expansion law. Coming at this from a transit perspective, as the exec director of People's Transit in Huron and also the president of the South Dakota Transit Providers, you know, we're looking at what possible impact this could have on ridership, if anything. My understanding is there are about 18,000 people that have signed up for the expansion. This resolution is something that could go, it basically says that if the federal government allows it, then South Dakota will also require people on the expansion who are capable of working to work. My understanding is also 12,000 of those 18,000 currently are working. I'm looking at this from a transit perspective and whether it could either increase ridership or decrease ridership across the state of South Dakota. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on it as far as, you know, not only supporting it, it's also going to be rolling into the House next week, I believe. So how do you feel about this?
Sure.
Thank you. Go ahead,
I get that.
David.
Yep, well, we voted on that in the Senate, and I voted for SDR 501. And so now it's gonna head over to the House side. So, just to back up there a little bit, through an initiated measure, the people of South Dakota voted for Medicaid expansion at the last general election. And the state has proceeded with rolling that out. The legislature wants to ask the citizens to clarify, do you want to allow the state to impose work requirements on those who are not physically and mentally disabled? So if you're able-bodied, but you qualify under the expanded Medicaid rules, should you have a work requirement in place, similar to what we do for a SNAP or food stamp benefits? Because right now we can't. The way the constitutional amendment was written, we can't do it. And so this resolution that we voted on this week in the Senate, all it does is says, we're gonna ask the people to authorize that if we can. It doesn't mandate it, it doesn't require it, it authorizes us to ask later on. Because a lot of things have to happen, because it's also set by federal law. And that goes back and forth based upon the administration. Under the Biden administration, they won't authorize states to have a work requirement. Under the Trump administration, they did. And would likely, if President Trump is re-elected or elected in this fall, we kind of assume he'd go back to that position. And so the federal government has to be on board, and then our state laws have to be on board for this to ever happen. And so this is the first step of several before we actually have a work requirement in South Dakota. Now, how will it impact ridership? I'll tell you, that's the first time I've been asked that question regarding this bill. I think it can go both ways because, if those people need rides to work, they'll be calling you. There was a lot of debate about the number and how many people would qualify. It's hard to guess that because we're still going up in terms of the number of people who have taken advantage of the Medicaid expansion. It's just kind of a steady climb at this point. They assume at some point it'll plateau out, but it's been in place for the last year, since July 1, when enrollment opened up, and so people are still signing up for it as they become eligible. So I think this is a good thing for South Dakotans to vote on, for the people to decide, do we want to have a work requirement in place, or actually back up, to allow the state in the future to decide if it wants a work requirement in place.
I'll kind of spin off of that, and so everybody in the audience understands a joint resolution, if passed by both chambers and signed by the government, or by the governor, is a election item that we'll see on the ballot in 2024. You will be the ones to decide it, not necessarily the legislature. We pass that to you to make that decision for several purposes. But I think that when this Medicaid expansion passed in 2022, I think we were looking at somewhere between 45 and 50,000 people would be eligible. And as of right now, there's only been 18,000 that have applied and have been approved for the Medicaid expansion. And we want to make sure that we talk about this because we're looking at able-bodied people that could be part of the workforce. And I think if you look at the legislature this year, if the one trend that you can kind of see is that we're focusing on workforce. It's a concern statewide, is the number of people that we have to work, trying to recruit people to come to South Dakota, but more importantly, finding the people that we have right now, can we get them involved in the workforce? And to get to your question about ridership, obviously, those able-bodied people may not have a car, so they may need a ride to work. And, you know, People's Transit was in the Capitol this week. We had a great reception. They showed a video, and I think they showed about 6 people on the video, and Galen, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 4 of them that were on that video said, we ride transit so we can get to and from work. Now folks, we're all gonna leave here today, we're all gonna go get in our car and we're gonna go home. But for a lot of these people, to get to work, they need people's transit, they need public transit to get to and from work. And for those that need to have family members moved around, if they are out in the workforce, obviously, if they have children, they're gonna need that ridership again to get their kids to and from school or to and from daycare. So I think that as this bill progresses, as we talk about trying to get those able-bodied people in work jobs across the state of South Dakota to help with the employment issue that we have in South Dakota, transit and ridership is probably going to increase. And so the demand for that will have to increase as well. So if I had a crystal ball to project it, you won't lose ridership, I think you'll gain it.
Well, thank you. My counterparts here have covered that so well, I really don't know what I can add to it other than a reminder that that resolution will put that question, should there be a work requirement for Medicaid eligible able-bodied recipients or not, will be for you, the voters, to decide.
Okay, another question from the audience? We can always rely on Ben to ask a question when we have a little void.
Yeah, well, I got 2.
Okay.
But, first one, and you guys can answer this second, but I noticed going through the bills yesterday, there's literally even 192 bills, you know, take away resolutions and things like that. 192 bills on both sides that have been proposed. Already multiple are at the 41st day. But I also noticed that 17 of those are related to medical cannabis in some way, shape, or form. As you read through them, there's some financial things that have to do with the cards and things like that. And just curious, your guys' thoughts as to where we are within that program and it's been multiple years now, we're still hammering out things, and just thoughts of that. But I guess where I wanted to go, since we were talking about resolutions and the teeth they have and whatnot, House Concurrent Resolution 6008 is the one on opposing an initiated measure to put abortion onto the Constitution. All 3 of you are listed as sponsors of that. And I guess my curiosity is that more for you a moral spot of your feelings on abortion? Is that more a spot of your feelings as to whether that belongs on the Constitution or should be an initiated measure? Just want to get that out there. And then also, if this is passed, as it's scheduled for hearing, has not yet been heard, what sort of teeth would a resolution like that have? So.
Thank you. Who would like to start?
I'll go first. I'll go first. Get it over with. I'm not going to talk a lot about medical cannabis because as that has evolved and as we've approved it, there's always things that need to be added on to, changed. in any statute that we pass in the Capitol, come back a year or two later, we're gonna find things we need to add, tweak, fine tune, and so there's a lot of different discussions about medical cannabis. What I wanna focus on is the resolution 6008, dealing with the abortion issue. And folks, that's going to be on the ballot this fall, I believe. I don't know that they've got the signatures turned in yet, but they're working feverishly to get it. And from our perspective, or at least from mine, I'll speak for my own behalf, I think that the abortion initiation that's coming, that we would be voting on this fall, is a step way too far. And I think that we appreciate life, and I think that for most South Dakotans, especially for me, talking on my own behalf, I feel abortion is wrong. And the initiation that they're coming forward with that would make you vote is a step way too far, allowing abortion up to full term. And I think people in this room need to understand, whatever your position is on this issue, I think that we need to take a strong look before you vote this fall and make sure that you know what you're voting on. And the resolution that's been adopted, that we'll be hearing in the legislature, is just trying to provide information to you, the voters, that we feel that this is an opportunity for them to go too far in this particular issue. Asking you to look deep and hard and provide sanctity to the importance of life. And so I'll leave it at that. I believe almost every Republican, and I don't know if any Democrats have signed on to the resolution or not, but we just feel that this is an issue that goes way too far. And so we'll be hearing it. It's started by Representative Kamak, so the House will be working on it first, and then we'll try to get it sent over to the Senate. But I think almost every Republican legislator, both the Senate and the House, has signed on to this thing. We understand the importance of what we could be facing this fall, and we want to make sure that we protect mothers, but we also protect the sanctity of life.
Yeah, thank you. Well, regarding the abortion question, yeah, my position is it's just flat wrong. The question about, well, is there teeth in this resolution? Well, really not. It really is asking us as the full legislature to go on record where we stand on the question. And in fact, asking our voters to agree with how we see it. But they'll have the final decision if it does get on the ballot, and it's like Senator Representative Chase said, it's there's a lot of effort to get that on there. So I think two things otherwise that I see here is this would be a constitutional amendment, and I think anytime we do a constitutional amendment, that's a huge decision, because once we've changed that constitution, it is almost impossible to go back and put a different constitutional amendment on. It just almost never happens. So that's one really great concern. And then the other thing I have is, as we reviewed the language of the bill or the measure, there would be, in effect, no restrictions at all. Where now we are at the other end of the spectrum. If there has to be a middle ground of some sort, this certainly would not be a middle ground.
I'll start off with the medical cannabis question. I think Representative Chase said it well that this industry is still growing. This is a highly regulated industry, and a comprehensive package that was put into place a few years ago, and we're still kind of working through that. I would say a lot of the stuff you're seeing this year is tinkering around the edges. It's not making major changes to anything. We're still trying to find ways to fine-tune the program, but I haven't seen anything come through that's major. We're not trying to repeal or make major changes to it. Regarding the resolution on abortion, first a little bit on the teeth question. when we're talking about the Medicaid expansion, that was a joint resolution. Joint resolutions are like bills. They have the force of law in the sense that we use joint resolutions to put things on the ballot. That will be potentially law at some point. Concurrent resolutions, which the abortion resolution is an expression of opinion. Doesn't have any force of law at all. And so when we vote on HCR 6008, we're simply expressing our opinion as a legislature. Yes, I'm sure every Republican is likely, haven't gone through the list, but they're likely to be on board on this one, because all three of us are pro-life legislators. We all agree that the proposed amendment goes too far. There can be space for discussion about is our current statute too far the other way, and is there room for compromise so that people can be more comfortable with where our laws are at. I think we can have those discussions, but by going to this constitutional amendment, we go back to the problem we had before the Dobbs decision, which was that so much of our abortion discussion happened in the courts. It happened through, we had politicized judicial appointments, and we had to do, everything had to be done in a lawsuit. People couldn't talk and debate and decide how do we deal with abortion through the political process. And this goes back to that, where now our entire abortion discussion is back to the courts. And I don't think that's the right thing for us to do. I think it's better for us to have the discussions that we need to have about what are the right laws to have for abortion, but do that through the legislative process, or an initiated measure, or a referendum, but let's keep it on the level of statutory law, where we can debate and have conversations about what should that law be, what should the parameters be for abortion in our state. But once you put it in the Constitution, I'm afraid that we're going to start politicizing our state level judgeships. And those have become much more controversial, and I don't think that's a good thing for our judiciary. And so I'd rather keep it at a legislative level so that we can continue to have those conversations as the years go on. You know, as one thing that Roe did back in the 70s was it froze the ability of us to have legislative conversations regarding abortion. Now, you might wonder, well, we stop talking about it every year, but those are always kind of on the edges about what the edges of the constitutional framework was. It never let us really grasp with the concepts of what exceptions should exist: life, health, rape, and incest, all the different real difficult questions we have to grapple with on abortion. It took that out of the political realm. It took that out of conversations like this and only left it to the judiciary. Now it's going to take us time to work through that. We as a society are going to take some time to decide what those laws should be. And there'll be a lot of pushback. It's going to take us time. It could take us 5-10 years through elections and voting to get to that point. But if we put this constitutional amendment in place that's currently being circulated, that ends that conversation again, and just gives it back to the judges where I don't think it should be.
Thank you. We would have time for one more question if somebody from the audience would have a question they would like to ask.
Kathy Arnold from Huron. Thank you, gentlemen, for your stand on life. If I'm not out of place, this goes to all three of you. And what I'm wondering is how safe are both, like the nuclear deals and the hydrogen deals that are being talked about?
I'm gonna let the energy experts start.
Well, regarding hydrogen, it was interesting in our whole committee, and the people that came to testify regarding hydrogen, nobody brought up the question, even our committee members, about do we need to be talking about the safety of hydrogen right now? So, so I don't have an insight on that myself, because I haven't done enough of my own research on that. Regarding nuclear, yeah, the big challenge there, concern there, is to have a sound waste disposal plant, to the earlier gentleman's question. And frankly, I don't know enough about that either, but I know that nuclear has been used a lot in other countries, so, and I haven't heard of, other than many years ago, you know, the Chernobyl accident in Russia. That's the last time I've heard of anything newsworthy.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, we had a resolution last year regarding nuclear power, and I, as chairman of the Senate Commerce Committee, the Commerce Committees were invited to have a power tour this last year, where we took a day and went to see the Big Stone power plant, came to see the new peaking plant in town here, the natural gas facility, and then had a presentation regarding modular nuclear reactors. And I mean, the nuclear reactors themselves are, I believe, safe. I mean, you don't have that risk of a meltdown that we're not gonna have Chernobyl here. I mean, they don't have that capability, just the way they're designed. And so we're not really that concerned. The bigger concern is always with the waste. But there's still, like I said, there's not enough waste generated by these that, you know, that they can keep them on site at this point. And so that way it's not that significant of a concern until the nation, at some point, if the country decides it's going to start centralizing those types of things, but that's a different conversation for us to have. At this point, I feel it is safe for them to proceed, as long as they have appropriate regulatory guidelines in place.
All right.
Sorry. I was just gonna say, the only other thing I would have added there, on my end, why, nobody asked any questions about safety of hydrogen pipelines, and I think that was mainly because at this point, the Public Utility Commission just wanted the authority to what they call site these pipelines, if we ever get them, so that we don't have to play catch-up when the time comes, and so then the whole question about safety was gonna be dealt with on another day.
1071, which is the bill that we passed out of our chamber and sending it over to the Senate, basically allows the PUC to do investigations and research upon nuclear power. It doesn't give the authority for anybody to mine uranium in South Dakota. It doesn't give anybody the ability to site disposal locations within South Dakota. It's simply to allow the PUC to do the research to find out if these facilities are safe and what has to be done in order to licensure and utilize that in the future. So that's all that 1071 really did. I believe they're safe. The nuclear reactors that we're talking about, much like Senator Wheeler said, they're smaller in nature and can be utilized, can be turned up, and can be turned down as the peaking needs for electrical demand is there. And so, you know, it's probably a new concept, new ability for us to move forward in the future, providing clean energy, doesn't have any emissions, just reliable. And so, is it something that'll be here in the next year or two? Probably not, much like autonomous vehicles. So we're just laying the groundwork and having the discussions that, you know, these things could be here within the next 10, 15, 20 years. So when those are developed and when they're built, you can say that you remember back in the day when this item or this idea was just first discussed with coffee with your legislators.
Okay, we've just about come to our hour time limit. We're going to have each of the three 2 minutes for closing comments, and we're going to begin with Senator Wheeler.
Well, thanks again for coming out. We do have a lot of bills on my, if you look on the LRC website, you can see the bills that we have, each of us have put in as prime or co-sponsors. And so if you have questions about any one of those, Doug, we'll figure that out. I'll just kind of go through a few. One of the bigger ones that I did have come through the Senate, I'll just touch on as we leave. It's not a fun conversation topic, but it's an important one. And that's child pornography. Unfortunately, we've seen an increase of this since COVID. And I had some prosecutors talk to me about this concern and that our laws in South Dakota aren't necessarily doing the job that needs to be done to handle the issue. And so I worked with some other legislators and with some with prosecutors to put together a bill to strengthen our laws in that area. And then interestingly, the Attorney General also had a bill regarding artificial intelligence generated pictures of that nature. And an important topic also in terms of protecting children. And so, and another legislator on the House side also had a bill on the same topic area. And so we all three came together and worked out our differences and one strong bill that came through and passed the Senate this last week to strengthen our laws in that particular area, because we want to make sure we're protecting kids. And it's an area that unfortunately we've seen an increase in. We need to push back against it. And so I dug into that to work with the Attorney General, prosecutors, other legislators to make sure that we're fighting back where we can in that area. So maybe that's what you heard me talking about on the radio.
Thank you, Senator. We will hear from Representative Schneider.
Okay, thank you. You know, one of the things that we have as far as opportunities while we're in the legislature is various little different, I'll call them educational type seminars or workshops that are put on that we maybe run an hour after a session is over. One of those was about autonomous vehicles early on. Another one was about something called quantum computing. And the president of the Dakota State University gave an overview of that for us. That's another one, that trying to put your mind around what this quantum computing means. Quantum by its nature is, just a huge leap forward. Well, one of the examples she gave us was that, these computers that are coming online now are so much faster than the current ones that we have today, the biggest ones and whatever they are. She said, as an example, what would take our best computer today about 3 years to solve, this quantum computing computer will do it in just a few seconds. So I don't know where that's going or what that could be. And then there was one other one was, this was actually part of our Ag and Natural Resources Committee. We had Luke Lindberg, the CEO of South Dakota Trade Group, very interesting on trade groups that they've taken to other countries. One of them being in Mexico last fall, and we had one of our very own Huron companies as part of the 5 that went on that, and that was Advanced Sunflowers. So we have international economy trade bases going on right here with some of our Huron businesses. So lots going on out there, and just reminding ourselves that there's a lot more going to be going on. When we meet again in a couple of weeks here, and this, maybe there will be more money stuff to talk about, but there'll still be plenty. So, thank you.
Representative Chase.
Thank you, Mike, and I had that down as well, and I just crossed it up because the good representative talked about quantum computing. I'll just add that President Griffith from DSU came in and gave the presentation to all of us legislators, and she opened up her remarks as that quantum computing is really quite simple. And then she continued to talk, and within 2 minutes, all of us had this glazed over look on our face like, we don't understand a thing. Way above us, above our pay grade. But it was a good discussion, and that is what's coming down the road. Good discussion this morning, folks. Good comments, good questions. It's good to know that a citizen legislature has 3 legislators up here that are being drilled by the questions from you, the public, and we appreciate that. We need your input. We need your talking points. We love to hear your thoughts, and that's what we can do is we take your thoughts to peer and continue on. Many of you have visited so far. There's many more that are coming up that are going to be visiting. I know the school system's coming again this week. The realtors are coming this week. But we have all kinds of different entities that are coming. If you are, please let us know that you're coming. We can make sure that we can either recognize you or visit with you as you come. But our next meeting is 2 weeks from today. We hope you all come back. Bring a friend. Hopefully there's more donuts, and we'll move forward. But as always, you can reach us at any time, guys. Just email us. Our emails are always on the legislative site. You all know how to get a hold of us if you want to find out. It's always in the newspaper or cell phones. We're responsible to you. We want to hear from you. And We either have two choices, yes or no on these issues. And sometimes it's very difficult for us, and sometimes it's nice to have that feedback from the public. And what your thoughts are, what your desires are. So be in touch, continue to come, bring a friend. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Let's show our appreciation to our legislators. I want to thank each of you for coming this morning and being interested in what's going on in state government. I do have 4 announcements. Burger Battle in Huron starts February 1st. I think there's 9 restaurants, Lori, that are participating in the Burger Battle. You've heard about it in other towns. We're going to join in and do that in Huron. Tomorrow night at James Valley School, the Empire Trio is doing a Huron Concert Association concert at 7:30, if you're interested in that. As Roger said, our next coffee will be on February 10th, 2 weeks from today. And then we'll have a third one on February 24th. Lastly, the Huron Chamber and Greater Huron Annual Meeting Celebration will be the 22nd of February at the Huron Event Center, and you can get tickets by calling the Chamber office or stopping in. Again, thanks for your participation. Have a great day.